What's up, metalheads? Welcome to the Scrap Metal Podcast, the show for the misfits who've been listening to the same music since high school. I'm your host, John Von Frankenstein, and joining me today is my metal thrashing mad co-host, Chris. Chris, I gotta ask you, man, how you feeling?
I gotta say, I am feeling nice.
Nice. I love it. Nice, if you will. Chris, does this feeling of niceness have anything to do with how you're keeping your heavy metal street cred?
It absolutely has everything to do with our heavy metal street cred.
Oh.
Because we have reached the nice episode of episode number 69.
Nice.
We made it.
We did it.
We did it. We were consistent.
Another milestone down.
Yes. It's my favorite milestone so far. Episode number 69, the nicest episode there will ever be. And yeah, that's why I'm feeling nice, you know. I have been looking forward to this day for a long time, and we're finally here.
Is this something that you dreamt of? Is it something that you've thought about, like how to do an acceptance speech sort of thing once we finally reached it?
I hadn't, but now I kind of wish I had, you know.
Give me your acceptance speech. Who do you want to thank as we reach this 69th episode?
First I want to thank the Lord Jesus Christ through through which all things are possible.
Jot that down.
I also want to thank the Academy and the Foreign Press Association. And no, I'm going to keep going for another 10 minutes until the music gets louder and louder. It's going to be like those old vaudeville acts or like those old cartoons where they'd like put a hook out and pull them off. That's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to pull me away.
Exit stage left, like. Oh man, yeah, dude, it's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible that we've made it. Like you like to say, we've stayed consistent.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the biggest pat in the back that we can give ourselves, right? That we've stuck it out this long.
Yeah, I mean, we are fast approaching 3 years of doing this.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
Know?
And we were just talking about other podcasts mentioning it as well, that like there are podcasts that don't make it past like the third episode. So yeah. we're I think we done good.
Yeah. That'll do, pig. That'll do.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I'm feeling a lot of joy, the fact that we've hit episode 69, and of course with that episode comes the thought of, you know, some more adult themes, maybe something getting a little bit spicy, you know. And my favorite thing is how sometimes an intro can be really clean, like an intro to a video, I mean, where it's like something really mundane, like someone cooking a meal, or someone looking for a lost shoe under a bed, or maybe even a delivery guy dropping off a pizza with extra sausage. And these clean intros usually lead to stuff that's a little bit raunchier, a little bit dirtier, a little bit more hardcore. And I love that. And I'd love to, in this episode, the 69th episode, to jump into talking about clean intros in music. I mean, making sure that we talk about the way that clean intros in metal will go ahead and set up this contrast. And, you know, it almost heightens the point in the song where it starts to get a little bit rougher, a little bit more hardcore, a little bit more nasty. Chris, are you excited to talk about clean intros?
Oh, no, step co-host. I've gotten stuck in the intro.
Oh, boy. You fucking delivered, buddy.
But I am indeed very excited to jump into this topic. You know, like we have mentioned before, as much as we love this very aggressive music, there is also something to be said about electric, acoustic, and clean guitar tones in metal because it adds that contrast and it kind of shows some more artistry. And like, it's the more thrash metal I listen to, the more I'm like, there is like acoustic guitar is just as important to thrash metal as the fucking distortion and fast riffs are.
Oh yeah.
So I am very excited to dive into this topic. I'm very excited to talk about these clean intros, these acoustic intros, because these are some of my favorite songs that I listen to.
Right.
You know,
right.
So it's definitely a topic I'm very excited to jump into.
Awesome. I'm so happy that you're excited because like you've brought this up before, and that's sort of what brought about the idea, talking about how you will create contrast in a song. And it's good songwriting.
Yeah.
You know, to bring in a song with a clean intro or with an acoustic intro to kind of not to lull the audience or to like fool the audience into a false sense of security, but more so to build the story along in the way that the song starts to build and take shape, and how you start to bring in different elements and stuff. I think that with some really extreme music, it's just like straight ahead, like they skip the clean intro and they go straight for pummeling each other.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, just nasty right off the bat. And then you've got the clean intros that are crafted in such a way that it is now bringing the listener along in the journey as the song is building. And like, I think sometimes you can get a little bit showboaty with how long the clean intros can go on. We've talked about how Iron Maiden loves to almost get in their own way with having super long clean intros.
Yeah.
And like different themes get brought in and different themes get built on. I think that you can also go to that extreme too, where it's like, all right, now I'm 4 minutes in. When is the song going to get going? But I think when it's done right, a clean intro will help to propel you into that next part of a song. And the first song that I want to talk about is the song Grace by Lamb of God. I think this is a perfect example of how you can have something that creates a high energy sensation, but it's a clean intro. So maybe people may have the idea that like a clean intro has to be boring. A clean intro may be like a little bit lighter, a little bit more laid back. The way that Lamb of God starts this song off, it's like this really cool guitar line that gets harmonized. And the fact that it's all played with clean guitar helps to accentuate just how impressive the guitar work is. There are these lines that Mark Morton and Willie Adler play through and harmonize with each other, and you can hear how tight they are and how articulate they are in their picking, and it's super, super impressive. So right off the bat, you've got something that is creating this high energy, you're starting to get things going, and then when you get into the guitar slide, that brings in the dirty riff, and it's just like the fucking 16th notes on the double bass and stuff, and it's just being doubled by the guitar as it's kind of dancing around the fretboard. And it's so exciting. Like I feel like a clean intro can be just as exciting too.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to mention this song right off the bat. It's the very first song that I thought of when we started talking about doing an episode on clean intros. Chris, what's a clean intro that you can kind of shout out there?
Well, I don't think I'm introducing anyone to anything new, but Metallica likes to do this.
Oh yeah.
And one of probably my all-time favorite Metallica song is Battery, which is the opening track on Master of Puppets and has an acoustic intro. And what's interesting about that acoustic intro is that it then goes into almost the same exact thing that they're playing on the acoustic guitars, but on the distorted guitars.
Right.
And I really like that, and I think that's really cool, but I also really like the approach they took with Fight Fire with Fire on Ride the Lightning. And I think that's what I really want to talk about, because I've brought this song up before as like the song that made Metallica fans, you know, in 1984 say they sold out because they started playing acoustic guitars.
Yeah.
After Kill 'Em All was nothing but electric guitars and for the most part just distorted guitar and these thrash metal and speed metal riffs, and you start listening to Ride the Lightning and the first thing you hear is this very pretty acoustic guitar.
Yeah, it's like a 12-string guitar.
Yeah, like it's so different from the rest of the song, and I think that's why I wanted to talk about this more than Battery, because Battery, while the intro is super cool, it's still kind of got that like melancholy or like a very like an impending doom kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
Whereas like Fight Fire with Fire, it's this very pretty sound, and then it goes into this ridiculously fast riff.
Yeah.
And James Hetfield is talking about like the US and the USSR dropping nukes on each other. Like, and I almost feel like that's the point, is that you have this very pretty song that's almost supposed to be like, oh, look at this beautiful day. Isn't life wonderful? Oh, fuck. That's like every nuke the USSR has, and it's being launched at us right now.
Yeah.
And so I love that approach where it's like the ultimate contrast, and that's the point. The point is to be as different from the rest of the song as possible. So this way, when you're lulled in with this acoustic intro, and then all of a sudden, when James Hetfield comes in and is playing this riff and is talking about nukes going off, and you know, it's what's the last line of the last verse where he's like, Armageddon's here, and there's like, you hear like a laugh in the background.
Yeah.
And like, I love that contrast, and I love that it goes from this very sweet sound to this like very thrashy sound about the thing that everyone was worried about, the nukes going off.
Yeah. See, I love, like, that's what I was talking about in the intro, is the storytelling that goes on, not through the lyrics, but through the music, through the contrast that they're creating with this very pretty, clean intro to all hell breaking loose and the distorted guitars coming in. And that's like, I love I love that Metallica is an example that you jump straight to, because as you were talking about the intro for Battery and for Fight Fire with Fire, I thought of the intro to And Justice for All as well. And I feel like that almost ties back to Grace by Lamb of God also, where it's like you've got these parts that are like accentuated, and it is sort of like a lead guitar line that gets played through that too. And then you've got like as the melody is going on, you've got the other clean guitar coming in and harmonizing, and then you've got the dun 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 dun, you know, like those heavy parts being accented, and then it's just dun 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 shum, and then it jumps back into the I love how almost like the sound is like sucked out of the speakers. And then it's lulled back into the clean guitar again. I love stuff like that because it just creates a lot of audio storytelling. It's this musical storytelling that you build throughout the way that the music is composed, and that's what's so exciting about clean guitar intros. Metallica is a great example. I love that you brought them up, and I almost set the challenge for myself, like, you're not allowed to bring up Metallica. You're not allowed to bring up, like, the usual, like, you know, you can't bring up the big four, because I was like, everybody knows those clean intros.
Yeah.
But it's for a reason. It's because they were so effective that I'm not giving Metallica the credit to say, like, they came up with, clean intro into dirty verse, into clean verse or whatever, like bridge.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why clean guitar is used so effectively and prevalently within thrash. I think it's because Metallica was not afraid to kind of surprise everyone with an opener where it's a needle, you drop the needle, and now it's clean guitar. You know, it's like, it's very pretty, like you said, very, very pretty acoustic guitar. I love clean tones too. Like, as a guitarist, I love the different clean tones that you get throughout music, throughout heavy metal, throughout rock, because not every clean tone is created equally.
No.
You have like a very 80s super compressed type of clean tone. Think of like the intro to Hysteria by Def Leppard. Think of any of like Whitesnake's clean intros, Queensryche's clean intros. It's that like Rockman unit that people would use. It was created by Tom Schultz of Boston, and we've talked about him a ton. And he was an engineer, so he came up with this unit that he was able to record with. That's why Boston's music sounds so instantly recognizable and like unlike anything else. And so during the 80s, a lot of these bands wanted to use those Rockman units to get that really compressed, very chimey, like kind of glassy, clean tone. But then you've got like where you've got an amp that has maybe a little bit of overdrive to it, and you just like rolled the knob down on the guitar itself, and like that's your clean tone.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting too. And like the point I'm getting at is that it's just, it doesn't have to be super clean, super chorusy. Just something that's sort of cleaned up a little bit is a really cool clean tone. The reason I'm rambling on and on and on about Guitar Gear and guitar nerdery is because the intro for the song Invisible Wounds, Dark Bodies by Fear Factory has a really interesting clean tone. It is not a very pretty clean tone, but it does have a lot of reverb, a lot of chorus to it, and it's kind of like it's a very 2000s nu metal-ish sort of clean tone. You can tell right away by listening to it that Dino from Fear Factory is playing with like a super low string action, because you get like a lot of string buzz within that. But I love that sound. I love that it's this buzzy, thin sounding clean tone. And because he's playing it on a 7-string, it's also thin but beefy at the same time.
Yeah.
It's really odd. It's so hard to describe. But I think the best way to put it is that it sounds very digital. And that was Fear Factory's whole thing. Fear Factory's whole thing was we've got really tight synced up machine gun guitar syncing up with the kick drum, and all the songs are like the themes and like the album artwork, everything is very mechanical, and you know, the human versus machine sort of thing. There's a reason why they were on the Terminator video game soundtrack way back in the day. It like fits that vibe perfectly. So this clean tone sounds very digital to me. I also love that in a very 2000s way, they follow the formula of clean intro into the dirty intro to a clean verse, dirty chorus, clean verse, dirty chorus, clean bridge, dirty chorus, and out, where they take that clean riff and now they're playing that distorted.
Yeah.
I love that. That is such, like, that was the formula that I used back in the day writing songs in middle school, where I was like, yeah, intro's got to be clean, and then the you got to go dirty, and then it's a clean verse, and then it's dirty chorus. Like, everyone did that.
Yeah.
Fear Factory, Limp Bizkit, fucking Orgy. Like, everyone back then was using that formula, and it created that contrast, that push and pull musically that is so interesting. I really love that. Have you ever listened to any Fear Factory? I feel like you'd really like how tight the guitars and the drums are, but I don't know that you've ever really taken the time to listen to them.
I feel like I've probably heard Fear Factory at some point, but I don't remember like specifically going out and be like, hey, let me check this out. It's probably just something that like I've listened to and then moved on to something else.
Right. Like you'd know a riff if it came on or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Do you have any bands that you can think of, or any songs that you can think of that use that sort of back and forth that you can have as your next selection?
I don't have anything specifically about going back and forth, because similar to you, I didn't want to talk about songs that we've already talked about, and like that's Iron Maiden's signature move. Hallowed Be Thy Name is a clean intro, and then the same thing played on an electric guitar, and then the same thing played on 2 electric guitars, like a half step away from each other. So like it's that's kind of the approach that Iron Maiden takes. So I didn't want to talk about, Hallowed Be Thy Name or even Dance of Death. The album cover is a nightmare, but the music on that album is great. And Dance of Death has a great, clean intro. But you mentioned the sound of 80s hair metal clean tones. And a band that has a song that, I don't know if their clean tone sounds like the hair metal bands, but what they're playing sounds like would be a hair metal intro. That's the band Bitch and their song Save You From the World.
Nice, okay.
The intro is this very pretty arpeggio being played. It's got that very like 1980s ballad sound to the guitar. And then Betsy comes in and she starts singing, and, you know, she says the line, "I just want to save you from the world." And it's got this very sweet sound. For I'd say a good like minute or two, it sounds like this ballad, and it's really cool. And then that ends and they go into like an 80s heavy metal riff, and it starts to sound like a heavy metal song, and that's really cool. And then the chorus is basically just like the chords that they were playing, the individual notes in the intro become the chords that they're playing as power chords for the chorus. And so that's really cool. I love the way that sounds. And so when we're talking about clean intros, and I was trying to think of songs that aren't, you know, Battery and Cemetery Gates, I was like, all right, what else is out there? Oh, I love this song by Bitch, you know, Save You From the World. And so I wanted to make sure I talked about that, because I am always going to take an opportunity to talk about the band Bitch. I fucking love them. And this song is just, it's so good. Like I said, the intro is very much that like 1980s clean arpeggio intro, and it sounds like something that would be on Monster Ballads. And Betsy comes in, she has this great voice, she sings, you know, the lyrics, and then they get into the more aggressive sound, and she puts on her aggressive sound, and it's so cool. Again, the contrast this time is just in the sound. It's not the contrast of a pretty riff into a, you know, scary speed metal riff. It's a very pretty sound into a heavy metal riff, but then the chords from that intro come back, and I think that's a really cool approach, and that's why I wanted to make sure I talked about this song.
It's exactly what you're talking about is why I love the way that a clean intro will inform a song. You know, where it's like, we're gonna now like take the raunchy knob and dial it up now after that clean intro, and we're gonna use the clean intro as opposed to like completely veering off from it. We're gonna use that to build the rest of the song, and as the foundation that we're just building up on. It's funny when you mention like the pretty, you know, like Monster Ballads, like it makes me think of like 18 in Life, you know what I mean? Like how that has a very like 80s, like super pretty, like it could have been played on an acoustic, but they play it on a clean guitar instead. Yeah. And then once it kicks into, you know, the like just before the verse riff, they have a part where it comes in with dirty guitars, and then it goes back to the clean guitars again. Yeah. Like I love stuff like that. It really does create a lot of dynamics within the music. And I think at times, as much as I love crazy ass, you know, like just pummeling, punishing music, at times, maybe because I write my own stuff as well, and like I can appreciate the songwriting aspects of it. I really like it when you can show some restraint, maybe, to help to build more tension as you're going on. Like, it's the same as with making a movie, right? Like you're trying to scare an audience, so you're not going to show the antagonist every single time in full light, like taking up the entire frame. You know, it's the way that you shoot the subject is going to inform the way that the audience feels about them, and like all those different things you're doing within songwriting as well. I love that we can show two sides of the same coin and say, like, you've got something crazy that's about to happen, but you've also got this, we're not getting to it just yet. It's that delayed gratification that you get. You know, going back to the theme of the 69th episode, delayed gratification, not until I say so. And a song, just like the same way that you were like, okay, no, I'm not going to talk about Metallica constantly throughout this whole episode. I was also like, okay, I'm not going to talk about the intro to My Way by Limp Bizkit, but that's our drop for the episode there. There you go. So now that goes on the playlist. Thank you, Russell. Um, although I do love like the new metal trend of like everyone getting a Roland jazz chorus amp, and like Wes Borland used it, like a bunch of the new metal guys, like that would be their clean sound, like this big ass Roland jazz amp. And they would use that for the clean tone. But I was talking before about how sometimes a clean sound isn't just a straight up very nice sounding clean sound. Sometimes it's just the volume on the guitar being rolled off, and there's still a little bit of like breakup to the sound. And a great example of that is in the song Nothing to Gain by Mudvayne off of the LD50 album. I love this intro so well because it paints a picture for the song. Not only is it creating contrast within the rest of the song, but it is laying the groundwork for Chad to tell the story of Ed Gein, and to almost create him, like to almost paint him as a sympathetic character, you know, someone who went through their own trauma, and someone who was just unfortunately very, very sick, and wound up going on to do very, deplorable things. But they are able to paint this character as very sympathetic thanks to the clean intro. It's just these guitar chords being played underneath Chad's lyrics, cold and silent, soiled face, I will wash it all away. And like, it's almost as though he was saying like Ed Gein was fully aware that what he was doing was depraved, and he is alone and he is afraid, and that was the deeper issue at hand. So but I love that then it kicks into the dirty part and it matches the lyrical content there. So you're pairing up like fine wine and cheese, pairing up a clean intro with these very sympathetic lyrics to now the heavy part with, lyrics about all this sick shit that he's doing. And it's such an interesting way. Then we go in the first verse, we go straight to like disco guitar, where it's just like waka chicka, waka chicka, waka chicka, waka chicka. Like very, like porno music is kind of what it sounds like with the wah wah. The 69th episode is, we're staying pretty on theme. But yeah, like I fucking love this song so much. And Mudvayne has a couple of songs with clean intros, but I think this was the one that hits the hardest because of the way that the guitar is also telling a story. It's also participating in building this story of who this sympathetic character is, and why we should feel sympathetic towards them, even though they did fucking awful things. I think it's really interesting when you can almost humanize an instrument in that way, right?
Yeah, that is really interesting when you look at it that way, where it's you're taking something awful and trying to clean it up or present it a different way, and it is different. See, whenever I think of Ed Gein, I think of Slayer's song about him, which doesn't clean him up at all. It lets you know how horrible he was. But that is an interesting approach, and I think it's always fun when you see that, where you're trying to present something in a different way or give a different perspective, and when you can use that through the music, it makes it interesting, it makes it fun, and it's almost like shock rock in the opposite direction.
Right, yeah.
Whereas like, again, Slayer, the first thing you hear in Angel of Death, other than Tom Araya screaming, is him saying Auschwitz, the meaning of pain. Like they're talking about the Holocaust, and they're trying to, through the music and everything, be as scary as possible about it. Mm-hmm. Whereas it's like you're saying, it's fun to take like a clean guitar to sing about Ed Gein.
Yeah.
And that's a fun approach.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting to me how they are able to, like I said, they're almost humanizing the instrument.
Yeah.
They are the music is matching what the lyrical content is at that point, because they are very much almost trying to speak from the perspective of someone who's done these awful things and just like is fully aware of it, and is like almost, sorrowful or feels some sort of remorse, although we know he was not mentally capable enough to feel any of that remorse,
Yeah.
and that's what led to those things. I mean, that's a whole different topic for a whole different podcast. I'd love to get into it if you want, but yeah, I love though that Mudvayne was able to find a way to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if I dug deeper that I could find other examples where we're able to humanize the instruments in the same sort of way, where it's matching, the instruments are now matching the lyrical content. Again, not to bring it back to movies again, but it's sort of like what you do with a score. You are using the score to accentuate the emotion that we see a character going through on screen. So
Yeah.
I think in that way, we got to give metal bands a lot more credit than maybe the general public does when it comes to knowing how to put emotion forth within this genre that does have a tendency to get really crazy and really, really heavy. Chris, what's another example of a clean guitar intro that you would really love?
So a lot of the clean intros I think of, and I think a lot of the clean and acoustic intros that exist are, maybe it's a lead line being played on an acoustic or with a clean tone, or maybe it's chords with individual notes, or it's playing this arpeggio pattern. But something that I find really interesting is the intro of Morning Star by AFI. It's been a while since I've gotten to talk about AFI.
All right.
AFI does have a number of, they tend to, ever since, I want to say, Black Sails in the Sunset, they like their last track to be 10 minutes long with a bonus track at the end, but the song starts with a clean intro. Songs like God Called in Sick Today, off of Sing the Sorrow, This Time Imperfect, is a song I fucking love. But Morning Star is a clean guitar that sounds like it has no effects on it. It is just the clean tone of the guitar, palm muting power chords.
Right.
And it's such a different sound from some of the other acoustic and clean intros that I was thinking of, that when I was thinking about songs and I remembered that AFI does this, I was like, oh, that's going to be fun to talk about, because they're doing something different from, what some of these other bands are doing. And AFI isn't, by any stretch of the imagination a metal band, but it's fun to see this band doing a clean intro, and like I said, doing something different than you normally see with a clean intro. And so I love that it's just palm muting with the clean tone, and then eventually, you get the dirty guitars in there and all the other instruments come in. And I think part of it is also that Jade Puget had joined the band, who is a better guitar player than their previous guitar player. And so he's a better songwriter than their previous guitar player. So the songwriting style got more interesting, and you got more interesting intros and things like that, instead of 90-second punk rock songs, which I fucking love and listen to the shit out of. But I also love some of the other stuff that AFI did that went into, a horror punk direction, and that also helped influence, emo and stuff like that. But yeah, I really wanted to talk about this song Morning Star because I loved that it was just clean, palm muted power chords, because it's so different from the other things that we're talking about that are either individually, picked notes, or maybe it's finger picking or whatever it is to make this very pretty sound. Whereas this is just like, no, I'm playing what I would normally play. I just turned off all the distortion. It's literally just the clean tone. Like I said, when I listened to it, I was listening to it right before we started recording. I don't think there's even any chorus or reverb on it. If there is, it's not apparent. And I love that. And it's such a good song. And it's Davey Havok's voice. He has a great screaming voice for the punk rock stuff, but he also has a really great voice for a clean intro or a clean guitar that has this very sad and melancholy sound to it. So that's why I love this song, Morning Star.
Yeah, I love that it was almost like this, almost like a DIY approach of like a very underproduced approach,
Yeah.
where it's just, yeah, let's make it sound like what you say about Slayer a lot of times. Let's do what we would be able to do live.
Yeah.
And live, we're not going to have an acoustic up there on a stand with a mic on it, or you're not going to have a ton of these other effects and reverb and chorus and all these other things, a ton of compression and stuff like that. No, just turn off your distortion pedal, or turn it to the clean channel on your amp and just make that be the sound. And there is a bit of that honesty that comes through in the music when you're able to do that as well, because it isn't being overproduced or made to sound like a hair metal band. Like, I think that would be very, very unlike them. From what I know of the earlier AFI, thanks to you, I would be very surprised if they came out with something that sounded like 30 Seconds to Mars. Sort of clean tone. You know what I mean? It's just like very unlike them, at least for that era anyway. So yeah, I love that sort of like you said, like where it's just a very simple approach. Like not throwing any additional effects or anything like that on there. Chris, do you think that it would be safe to say that there is a level of trust that a band is asking for you to have in them when they are starting off a song clean? Like, do you think that, when Metallica first put out Ride the Lightning, that there was this level of them maybe in the studio kind of going like, no, we know it's super different from Kill 'Em All. Just trust us and just follow us along in the process?
I think there might be some of that where the approach is like, hey, guys, I know the fans loved these speed metal riffs that were written by a guy who's in a different band now, but we're gonna come up with something that's a little bit different. We want to be more creative. And I think especially when you have someone, if we're talking specifically about Metallica, when you have someone like Cliff Burton in the band who is going to take classical music inspiration in the stuff he writes, of course, there's going to be those things that is almost kind of like showing off a songwriting prowess and being like, no, I can do more than just speed metal riffs. Right. I can write a very pretty, clean intro. I can play this really nice ballad on an acoustic guitar. So I think some of it might be, hey, guys, just check this out. We can still play the thrash metal and speed metal you love, but we like to, slow it down a bit. So this way, when we speed it back up, it feels even more different than that.
Right.
But I think there's also the approach of just like, I want to try something new. And I think for a lot of songwriters, that might be what it is, at least for bands that start off, again, going back to AFI, who started off as the straight up punk rock band. That, they're writing songs that are 2 minutes long because they're very clearly influenced by the Misfits and that era of punk rock. And they're coming up in this, SoCal punk scene. And then when they get a different guitar player who's kind of like, well, no, I want to play something that's more than just 4 power chords for 90 seconds.
Yeah.
I want to write something that's interesting. I want to play something that's interesting. And so I think that's why you see so many bands that the fans do kind of turn on bands because they tried something new. And it's like, no, why? You're supposed to write the same song but different. It's like, that's impossible. Yeah. So I think while there might be some belief of like, hey guys, trust us, we're gonna get to the good shit, I think there's also an approach of, well, this is what I want to write. This is what I want to play. So it's, I think it can go either way, which I think is interesting when you think about the bands that have changed their styles. And, my favorite is always Sugar Ray, who were a new metal band and then got popular with a pop song. So they decided to write nothing but pop songs, and then you have a band like Iron Maiden, who perfected the formula with Hallowed Be Thy Name and have been doing the same fucking thing for 40 years.
Yeah.
And they just keep hoping to write the next Hallowed Be Thy Name. It's like,
Yeah.
guys, you wrote it already.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's
Been there, done that.
I think, and that might be the approach of, guys, hang on, we're going to do the thing.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's Iron Maiden's approach, whereas some other bands, I think a band like Metallica and even a band like AFI isn't so much like, hey, don't worry, fans, we're going to do the thing you like. It's more of like, hey, we want to try something new.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes some of these intros so interesting, is because it's something new and it's something different. It's a departure from what the band normally does.
Right.
But if they're good at what they do, it still sounds good, even if it's different.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, I love that we had this opportunity to somewhat clean ourselves up a little bit. Why don't you give me your suggestion for this week with a nice clean intro?
So my suggestion this week is a song with an intro that is possibly one of my all-time favorite intros. That is the song "Reach" by Ghost.
Okay.
I fucking love this intro.
Yeah.
Because you've got the acoustic guitars, and I love that it goes back and forth between the left and the right.
Yeah.
And then it kind of does the Iron Maiden build, where like it's the two guitars, then electric guitar kind of comes in, but it's still the acoustic, but like you get like some drums in there and you get some other instruments in there. And then the third time they go through, it's all electric guitar and the drums pounding, and it's such a build up. And then I love how like it stops for a moment and then goes into the riff, which is like such a fun riff. But yeah, I fucking love the intro to Reach. It's so cool. And like I said, it does the thing that Iron Maiden does. And it also does the thing that Slayer does, where it goes back and forth between the left and the right. So like you're mixing Iron Maiden and Slayer into a song about like a fucked up church after the apocalypse. Like I fucking love it. And then it goes into
intro
lyrics
is
that I love.
almost a Slayer riff.
Yeah, like it's
Oh my god, I wish I knew the name of the song. Chris, help me out here.
I'm gonna assume you're thinking of South of Heaven, because South of Heaven,
yeah, kind of.
South of
I think
Heaven
that's it.
has an intro. And so it's kind of got that vibe to it. There's another song, I'm trying to think.
You mentioned Slayer and just both riffs popped into my head right away, and I was like, holy shit.
There's another song by Slayer. I'm trying to remember, because I think he says the title of the song after the part of the riff, and I'm trying to remember the lyrics. I want to say Ghost of War by Slayer does something interesting where they do the same thing, where it's left and right, where they're playing basically the same riff, but like the last note is different. So like Jeff Hanneman plays something that ends on one note, and Kerry King plays it and it plays a different note, and it's distorted, but it's the cool Slayer thing where they go back and forth left and right. And I love that the intro to Reach does that. And I just love the fucking song. I love the lyrics. I love oh my God, the fucking, can't you see that you're lost without me? That's such a fucked up thing to say. I love it. So for all of those reasons, my suggestion is to listen to the song Reach by Ghost.
That's a great fucking suggestion. You know, those fucking Ghost fans just don't know when to shut up about this band. As I'm in my brand new Ghost shirt, which is a cool little take on the cover of the stuff. I saw this and I had to get it right away. I fucking love the shirt. Chris, that's a great fucking intro. I always mention how that's the song that I heard that finally made everything click. And it's funny when you mention, like, you mentioned earlier on in the episode how it's funny to look back on what a band like Metallica did with Fight Fire with Fire, when, like, eventually they wound up doing, like, Nothing Else Matters. Like, what would those people who thought they were selling out then think of that song? You know what I mean? And, like, in a similar way, I know that a lot of bands that start out super, super heavy will get flack when they use clean guitar. And to the point or to the question that I had brought up earlier of like, is there a level of trust that you have to have in a band that, yeah, we're going to get to the good part, or just come along the ride with us. I love when a band will start a song out that you think is going to be completely clean and completely acoustic, and then it rips into something fucking really heavy.
Yeah.
And the song that I want to suggest that I think does this really, really well is a song that I've brought up before from one of my favorite bands, Square Nothing by In Flames. I love that this song just starts out like with a super jazzy lead line with these really pretty arpeggiated chords behind it. And when you talk about building and crafting a song in such a cool way that subverts your expectations for the song, because it's like it's more than half of the way through the song completely switches up, and you're also just creating that musical storytelling like I was talking about. You've got the clean intro with this harmonized clean guitar and the arpeggiated chords behind it, and then it goes into the first verse with just the bass and the vocals, with just these really quick hits that will come in, and then like that's it, just accentuating these different parts and like pulling back and forth, and it goes back into that same clean intro for like a pre-verse for the second verse, and it isn't until we're about to go into like the third verse or chorus really that we get all the heavy guitars, and then the song just fucking rips from there. So it'll surprise you, because if you think like, okay, cool, I'm in just for this nice, relaxed, like laid back sort of jazzy, Swedish jazz ballad, the song really takes you by surprise. And I've always loved that a band like In Flames can do this. I love that they allowed themselves to branch out from the more progressive, like melodic death metal that they were doing in the early days, and then eventually adding in some clean guitar too. On the album Horacle, which came out before Clayman, which this song is on, they also have a ton of acoustic intros on there. They've got one completely acoustic instrumental piece too that I think I've brought up before, where it's nice to see that evolution of a band. It's nice to see that they have enough trust in themselves as songwriters to say, yeah, we're going to lull you in, like I said in the beginning, with almost this false sense of security, and then just completely change up the feel of a song to surprise the listener. And I love being surprised. Like someone who's just trying to pull something out of the dryer and suddenly, oops, who's there? I love being surprised. And that's why I'm suggesting the song Square Nothing by In Flames. You said we had to do something crazy for the 69. Oh, man. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Scrap Metal Podcast. The time has come for us to pack up our gear, but we'll be back to rock out with you in the next episode.
Stay metal, everyone.
Good night.